Good morning, everybody. I'm here representing quite a large group of colleagues from Southern Cross University. We're a regional university based, we're global, we teach a lot online, but I come from the Lismore campus, which is about 2 hours south of Brisbane. Some of my colleagues work on the Gold Coast campus. This particular group, no one from the Coffs Harbour campus, but yeah, we've got about 15,000 students. So interestingly, the 9,000 students that Sylvia mentioned, probably similar sized university. So we're the fifth smallest university in the country. And we're actually proud of that because I think it enables us to do things a bit differently. So I'm here to basically tell a bit of a story about an experiment that we undertook in the last year, maybe a little bit more. And that was to put out an expression of interest for staff to respond to about authentic learning and engaging students and community partners in that learning process. So we called it the Engaged Learning Incubator, and we'd not heard, well, I had not heard of MELT at that point either, I should just mention. So where it ended up was curriculum co-design across 3 schools. Interestingly, along that way, I ended up at a workshop at the University of Queensland with John and came across his ideas and the Research Skills Development Framework and the Work Skills Development Framework. Somewhere along our incubator process, we introduced that as an idea worth exploring. Some unit assessors did and some did not. All of the units that we were working with or expressed interest in participating in our Engaged Learning Incubator are underpinned by experiential learning and in the community. So I work for a whole of university work unit, Southern Cross University Engagement, and this project, the Engaged Learning Incubator, was conducted first time, I think, that 2 whole of university work units collaborated in this way with the Centre for Teaching and Learning. So we were really keen to support academics that were working with industry and community and looking at students and industry as partners in that process. It was interesting to find what was implicit, embedded in these units as they had been run, and I think when I undertook the workshop with John, it became really clear to me that a lot of the skills that were underpinning that students and industries as partner, it was all implicit. It wasn't explicit. So how did we go about making those skills explicit? And two very first iteration MELTs have emerged, which I'll explore in more detail in the rest of this talk. One in particular I've become more involved with, which is the collaboration MELT. So we'll have a look at that one in more detail. They're really works in progress. I'll just touch on, it was interesting in the last discussion around definitions, and I think when we start talking engagement, engaged learning, coming from a work unit that's called, Southern Cross University Engagement, it's very clear to me that we're often talking about different forms of engagement. There's no right or wrong here, but engagement can mean a lot of different things to different people. I really like a paper by Bowen, and he's really unpacked, I think, some different ways that we can think about engagement. And we're looking in this frame around student engagement. So the notion that it can be with the learning process, and that's similar to active learning, with the objective study, experiential learning, the context and multidisciplinary learning, also student engagement with the human condition. We really like all of those definitions. I think from my perspective, we add the community and the industry as partners in this process as well. So when I describe authentic learning or experiential learning, in my mind, that means real world. But it's not always like that for other people. So I just thought it would be useful to frame the different ways, and perhaps I found Sylvia's talk really interesting in that light. What does research mean to people? We could unpack engagement in the same way. So essentially at Southern Cross University, engagement drives everything we do. It's actually written into our founding act that as a principal function of the university, our courses, that we will provide courses of study and instruction across a range of fields and carrying out research to meet the needs of our community. Thank you. So it's actually already tied to our mission and our strategic direction of a university. The question for us is, how do we actually do this, and how do we do this together? And it's become a real driving force for my work unit. Interestingly, Sylvia also mentioned collaboration, and I guess that's why the Learning Incubator was so exciting, was a really small grassroots group of people having a go and collaborating across work units and working directly with academics around their units. So it was a real bottom-up way of working and quite unique. So but you can see that we're linking student engagement and student learning with research, but with direct engagement to our communities as well. I'll just hark back to Mick's keynote, which was actually really interesting for me. So on your right is the beautiful student engagement model based in partnership, and you can see those principles of trust, courage, plurality, responsibility, authenticity, honesty, inclusivity, reciprocity and empowerment. On your left is our model for our vision for our work unit. It's very simple, but essentially the blue ring is partnership and very much grounded in those same principles. And sustainability is a ring that we have around the outside, our ethical responsibility as well. And we actually see engagement, that community engagement, as being central to everything that we do in terms of research, teaching, and for us service, so how our academics choose to actually give service back to the community. I just thought that was a nice parallel. So one of the ways when we're working with academics, I do have an academic background, I'm no longer teaching, unpacking what does this engaged learning mean in this context. We came up with a continuum of possibilities of this authentic real-world opportunity, and looking across the curriculum as well, we didn't want to just focus with our Engaged Learning Incubator on the traditional third-year capstone, let's make all the community engagement and all that real-world learning in third year in a placement. I mean, there's nothing wrong with placements, and you can see the whole unit process there of real-world undergraduate research project or placement internship. But recognising that there is actually a whole lot of other opportunities available for engaging students with communities. And what were they? And how could we perhaps nudge out of that hypothetical into something more real? And so really our aim behind the Engaged Learning Incubator was to nudge along the continuum and look at getting a spread from first year through to third year, or where were there opportunities and who actually, because it was an expression of interest process, who was keen to try it out. And what was interesting, this was before I came across John's work around student autonomy as well. So in terms of this continuum of student engagement, was the lecturer choosing the real world scenario, or was the student getting that choice? And again, there's, is the student initiating, or is it an assessment item that they've been provided with? So there's these continuums that we were exploring. We actually spoke to students and staff who were using different approaches across both of those continuums and created vignettes where they could tell their own stories about where they were on that spectrum and what it meant for them. And that peer-to-peer was so important in engaging. We ran open workshops to at first engage staff in the idea of what even is an Engaged Learning Incubator and why would I want to be part of it. And so the open workshops were called Let's Make It Real. And the vignettes that we used were different case study examples of unit assessors trialling different real-world approaches in their units, and we strategically chose different disciplines and different sessions and year cohorts. So we were oversubscribed, and so it was an interesting process to go through. One of the key things was we wanted them to link to our Live Ideas program, which is where the community and industry propose projects to the university. So the need is coming directly from the community and industry. Thank you. And we chose the following 4 different units or subjects to work with, and you can see the disciplines spread there. Community engagement project, that was a new or rewritten unit. Arts and social sciences deliver that unit. Introduction to social welfare, sustainable tourism, introduction to geographic information systems. Student-driven community-based project, volunteering for social welfare, case study. Introduction to GIS is interesting. That's where students as partners really come through, but you can see there was no MELT developed for that one. So this is a compulsory first year unit. This one, sorry, I'm going to flick through just so we can get to the MELTs. This one's a third year capstone. So we've got a first year compulsory unit and a third year capstone elective unit, basically. This was the MELT developed by the unit assessor and she described it as the hug. She wanted to support those first year students in that social welfare unit, and she really wanted to hug them with this MELT. And you can see she's got arrows to indicate how you might move in and out of the facets. Interestingly, what Liz did with this MELT was linked it back to the core competencies for social welfare as well. So we're really going to move this one forward and look at how we can build some rubrics in around this. These students do need to volunteer for at least a few hours in the community, so it's a service learning model, essentially. The collaboration MELT is really around how do we support students to collaborate with others, with each other, with the community. We use the optimising problem-solving pentagons for both due to their flexibility, as well as the, just that it gave a lot of room to move, I guess. It was very open. So we drew on both the work skills development framework and the RSD to develop this. And interestingly, where we ended up with this was collaboration principles. So for students, their first assessment is to fill out a collaboration agreement with partners, and these principles sit up front. So the student and the partner actually explore these principles as a guide to how they will work together. We use action learning as a pedagogical frame for the unit, so very high touch for the first 4 weeks, and then the students and partners are almost on their own. Of course they're not, but so this unit's rolled out for the first time. It's actually running now. So it's never been run before. It is very experimental. And what we're finding is the 2 assessments, one is actually was the collaboration agreement, which was bedded down with those principles. And the other one is a portfolio, which has the private reflections of the students plus a showcasing open portfolio. And the portfolio is designed for them to use those principles as guides to their showcasing of the artefacts. That assignment is due after Christmas. This is a very difficult unit to run over summer session, by the way. The students are online, but the work they're doing with their community partners is face-to-face, and we're supporting through an online discussion board. The reflections are fascinating, and I'm finding that they really are going to be key, I think, for us to refine this unit. Yeah, and I would thank the students for allowing us to share their work as well. It's going to be an ongoing process with both of these units to see how we can embed the MELTs, but I really would also like feedback from the students. I've got a lot of ideas from the last few days about whether the rubrics we're using and whether the links from that collaboration MELT and the principles, how that's been working, not just for students, but also for the community partners, because they're actually, the partners are co-learners and partners in this as well. So community engagement project next year we will run in the second session, so from June, July, which will give us another chance. And I'm hoping to take the students from this cohort through a process of collaboration to work out what changes we might make. Social welfare is about to go into its first iteration in session 1, 2018, and sustainable tourism session 2. Yeah. So there's been a whole bunch of challenges and opportunities. Thank you so much. We really did take a bottom-up approach. Obviously, however, the approach we're taking is still linked back to the university's goals and mission. But we do need to document these pilots and be able to tell the story of the journeys that the staff have gone through and that the students are on, as well as the community partners, to actually capture what happened in this incubator project. It's been really clear to me that these ad hoc single unit approaches aren't necessarily where the strength of these frameworks might lie, and how do we map to the whole course profiles for all of those different discipline areas. And again, this conference has been really valuable in terms of some ways we can take an evidence-based approach to looking at where the opportunities across the course and mapping that course curriculum lie. Of course, that's not my work unit's responsibility. So, and we are in a period of intense organisational change. So our work units are I think we had 3 restructures in the last 18 months, and we'll probably have a couple more. So how do you continue this work in that, and I think that's a challenge for all of us. The goalposts move all the time. So communicating up, looking at embedding, I think coming back to, the research skills development framework as a backbone and doing that curriculum mapping could be a really rich way to work. We do definitely need to work across at least 3 or 4 central work units and then collaborate with the schools. So very complex, but I'm excited by that opportunity. So yeah, I think we'll keep moving with MELT. So I'm really hoping we'll be able to run some MELT workshops, and then I'll be able to demonstrate through our narrative and get buy-in to get John and others to Southern Cross to actually run some workshops with interested parties. And I'm really hearing the key role of librarians, and I'll definitely be taking that back to Southern Cross as well. There was a lot to cover. Thanks for your time.